Last year in music class, I was so into studying music history and researched a lot on Renaissance music and Baroque music. With the experience, romantic music pieces have gradually been added to my favorite classical music plate. So I decided to find out all about it. Today we are going to take a closer look at romantic music. By the, by the way, I'm sorry I didn't prepare for the sample music pieces for you. Romantic music is associated with the Romantic movement. Romanticism was an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that originated in the second half of the 18th century in Europe and strengthened in reaction to the Industrial Revolution. In part, it was a revolt against social and political norms of Age of Enlightenment and a reaction against the scientific rationalization of nature. It was embodied most strongly in visual arts, music, and literature, but had a major impact on historiography and education, and was in turn influenced by developments in natural history. Events and changes in society, such as ideas, attitudes, discoveries, inventions, and historical events often affect music. For example, the Industrial Revolution was in full effect by the late 18th and early 19th century. This event had a profound effect on music, which made instruments easier to manufacture as well as more readily available to the world as a whole. There were major improvements in the mechanical valves and keys, and most woodwinds and brass instruments depend on. New and innovative instruments could be played with greater ease and they were more reliable. Another development that had an effect on music was the rise of the middle class. Composers before this period lived on the patronage of aristocracy. Many times their audience was small, composed mostly of the upper class and individuals who were knowledgeable about music. The romantic composers, on the other hand, often wrote for public concerts and festivals and large audience of paying customers who had not necessarily had any music lessons. Moreover, the time in the US, there was a civil war, and all over the world there were countries fighting for independence. Composers were greatly influenced by intense nationalist feelings that developed after Napoleonic Wars. Consequently, as a musical movement, nationalism emerged in connection with political independence movements and was characterized by an emphasis on the national musical instruments such as the use of folk songs, folk dances or rhythms, or on the adoption of nationalist subjects for operas, symphonic poems, or other forms of music as new nations were formed in Europe. Nationalism in music was a reaction against the dominance of the mainstream European classical tradition. The classical period had been very rigid and strict, and the Romantic era pushed against that. Romantic composers sought to create music that was individualistic, emotional, dramatic. As you can see in this example here, visual art at this time was also more abstract and free and less exact and more emotional. And the music played by orchestras became very more difficult and technical. Along with that, romantic composers also sought to create program music, reflecting broader trends within the movements of romantic literature, poetry, art, and philosophy. Program music is descriptive, suggesting visual images of telling a story. Instrumental music that is free of a program and exists purely for its own sake is known as absolute music. Although descriptive music had always existed, orchestral program music became very popular during the Romantic period. The music development close links with literature and painting. Program music was often ostensibly inspired by or else sought to evoke non-musical stimuli, such as nature, literature, poetry, or the classic arts, and use direct imitation of sounds such as bird song or thunder. Okay, finally, the last but not least, music in this era emphasized emotion and stories. So, it's no surprise that opera blossoms during the Romantic era because the opera played a huge role in the telling of the story. Likewise, operas were much more over the top with the costumes, the scenery, the sets, and just the dramatic flair of the entire production. In short, they used all of this to emphasize the story itself. When you listen to the pieces composed by Schumann, Beethoven, Schubert, Chopin, Mendelssohn, Wagner, Liszt, Tchaikovsky, Brahms, Gianni Sarasate, Rachmaninoff, I hope you will remind yourself of all the information I gave you today. Remember, being able to see the big picture does help you enjoy the music even more.